They say that Kali is the Hindu goddess of death, time, and doomsday, and that she is synonymous with sexuality and violence. Though Kali does in fact have a more inspiring history, in the sense that she is also considered to be a strong and motherly figure, as well as being the embodiment of what is known as Shakti, or feminine energy, creativity, and fertility. While there is often depictions of Kali being this soul-devouring monster of a woman, with limbs for jewellery and weapons for every hand, her loving form is often forgotten about, or simply overlooked. You would be forgiven for assuming Kali is solely the goddess of destruction, given the tales that are often spun about her, but she is also considered to be the feminine form of time, as well as the nature that brings things to life or death. She is also often depicted carrying away the spirits of slain warriors. There are many tales as to how Kali was brought into existence, though all of them appear to be vastly compelling. In one version, we see Kali brought into existence by the warrior goddess Durga, who possessed 10 arms that each carried weapons, as well as a tiger, for which she used to ride into battle against demons. Though in one encounter, it would appear that Durga became most infuriated by the demons during one skirmish. She would become so enraged by her opposition that her anger would explode from her forehead in the form of Kali. Once manifested, Kali appeared to be a black-skinned goddess that went wild with bloodlust. She consumed the demons on the battlefield on behalf of Durga and strung their heads on a chain for which she wore around her neck. Though even after the demise of the demons, her rage could not be sated. The gods were at loss as to what to do with her bloody outbursts until Shiva stepped in and lay down in her path. When Kali realized she was stepping on Shiva, she was immediately brought to her senses after recognizing who he was. This story in the mythology serves to show us how alike the gods are to humans, that sometimes our own rage is so uncontrollable that we don't realize we could be hurting the ones we love. This is the case for Kali, who only realizes her actions when she has already stepped on Shiva, which is the catalyst to her calming down. It's easy to see Kali's violent behaviour and epitomise her as a destructive goddess, but the fact that she is able to see her fault and correct her own path shows that she is not only a remorseful goddess, but one who is thoughtful and full of feeling, that she is able to pacify herself when confronted by Shiva. From this story, Kali's association with the battleground is also derived. In ancient Vedic texts, however, Kali is not referred to as a goddess and is simply noted as one of the 7 flickering tongues of Agni the fire god. It's said that Kali is first mentioned as a distinct goddess around 600 AD, and that in the text from this time, she is placed on the battlefield, much like the story involving her being born from Durga. The story involving Durga continues, where after Kali had consumed the demons, she would be engaged by the demon Raktabija. Like many of the demons, they were terrifying to comprehend, and would cause much trouble for both the gods and the mortals alike. Raktabija also possessed an uncanny ability that allowed him to produce more demons whenever his blood hit the ground. This in essence made him virtually invincible, given that whenever he was attacked, his newly spawned demons would leap to his aid. Realizing she could not destroy Raktabija using brute force, Kali proceeded to swallow him whole, so as to not spill his blood in the process. In another version, Kali skillfully sliced Raktabija's head off his neck, and then drank all of his blood, ensuring none of it fell to the ground, and thus could not spawn any demons. In this story, many consider Kali to be nothing more than the personified wrath of Durga, and the embodiment of her fury. Other origin stories involve Parvati and Shiva. Parvati, the wife of Shiva, is typically portrayed as being benign and friendly, one who is often considered to pacify Shiva in his destructive moments, or at least serve as a balance for his destructive tendencies. In one Shaivism text, Shiva is described as asking Parvati to help him defeat the demon Daruka, who had received a boon that would only allow him to be killed by the hand of a female. Parvati agrees, and is said to merge with Shiva's body, a concept often explored in Hinduism to show that Shiva and Parvati are one and the same, that the masculine and feminine energy form the perfect balance. But in this story, after merging with Shiva, the form of Kali is born and proceeds to defeat Daruka and his army. Her bloodlust is said to get the better of her though, and it is Shiva who is described as being the one to calm her down, a contrast to the idea that Shiva is the one who needs to be calmed down. A different version is described in medieval Sanskrit text that states when Shiva addresses Parvati, who is in the form of Kali, as the dark blue one, she is greatly offended. Parvati, as Kali, then performs an enchantment of some kind that changes her dark complexion into one of gold, and thus becomes known as the manifestation Gauri. Another story involving Kali is her run-in with a band of thieves. The thieves were said to want to make a human sacrifice to her, and so chose a saintly monk as their target, against his will no less. The nature of the monk was said to have been so pure that it spawned Kali, who murdered the entire band of thieves, removing their heads and drinking their blood. Many might see this as Kali's vengeance, given the monstrous way in which she disposes of the thieves, but many also see this as Kali being a protector, that she came in the monk's time of need to save him. It may also be said that the reason for her tremendous punishment was equal to that of the monk's holiness, and that her treatment of her victims serves to inspire others to make the right choices, lest they feel her wrath. Kali has many different forms in which she is depicted, but two of the most common is the popular 4-armed form known as Dakshina Kali, as well as the 10-armed form known as Mahakali. In both of these forms, she is described as having black skin, though in Indian art, she is often depicted as having blue skin, possibly to coincide with that of Shiva's. Her eyes are often seen as these two energetic and often angry looking eyes, while her hair is usually disheveled. Often her tongue lolls out of her mouth, and she stands aggressively, sometimes over the passive Shiva. Sometimes she is naked, or seen wearing a skirt made of tiger pelt, or sometimes their arms or heads of humans. Sometimes she is seen accompanied by serpents and jackals. She is also seen wearing 2 matching earrings, some saying that these are actually embryos, and that they signify her love of children, and that she favours those who have an innocent and almost childlike mentality. In the Mahakali form though, or Great Kali form as it is known, she is seen with 10 faces, 10 feet, and 3 eyes upon each head. She is often seen with ornaments decorated around her limbs. In her Dakshina Kali form though, the one with 4 arms, she is seen carrying a sword, a trident, and also a severed head, for which she uses a bowl to catch its blood. The sword in her hand in this instance is said to represent divine knowledge, while the human head is to represent the human ego, which must be slain in order to achieve what is known as moksha, or enlightenment. Many see Kali therefore not as a destroyer of flesh, but more so the destroyer of ego. The protruding of her tongue in this form also has some significance, where it's been noted that the biting of one's tongue in some cultures is considered to be an expression of embarrassment or modesty. Therefore it's accepted by some that Dakshina Kali's protruding tongue is actually her expression of embarrassment and or mortification that she has stepped on Shiva in the first place. The other 2 hands are in the form of 2 gestures in Hinduism, one of fearlessness and one of blessing, which suggests that her worshippers and devotees will be saved as she guides them here and thereafter. The term Dakshina also refers to the gift in which gurus receive when performing a ritual, and such gifts are often given with the emphasis of the right hand. With Kali's 2 right hands held in gestures of blessings, it's easy to see where the name Dakshina Kali has stemmed from. Sometimes she can be seen with a garland of numerous heads, for which represents the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, an alphabet and language that Hindus believe are symbolic for a form of energy or even a form of Kali herself. In this sense, Kali is sometimes seen as the mother of languages and mantras. The idea that Kali is more so a protective goddess than a destructive one also links to a story where Yama, the god of death and the underworld, heard Kali's name. He was so stricken by the whispers of her reputation that he fled in terror. Thus those who worship Kali feel a protection from even death itself. At the beginning of the video, I also mentioned that Kali was associated with time. This is true in the sense that many compare her to that of Mother Nature, or the idea of nature, and that Kali serves to preserve it. Many worship her not as a destructive force, but as a preserver of nature, given that her hair flows long and free to represent the freedom in which nature has from civilization. The idea that she is depicted naked also lends to the idea that she is associated with nature, that she too is unburdened by civilization and man-made constructs. There also exists an idea with Kali being associated with time, that her dark skin represents the darkness which has always been present, even before the creation of life under the sun. This fits in with her preserver role, that Kali exists not to destroy, but instead to guard and make the most of life itself, similar to the role of Vishnu, the preserver god. In this role as Mother Nature, she is referred to as Kali Ma, meaning Kali the Mother, and millions of Hindus revere her as primordial Mother Goddess that is nurturing and loving. In terms of worship, goddesses play an important role, particularly in the study and practice of the Tantra, a collection of ancient magical stories and folk practices that exist alongside Vedic tradition. Parvati, for example, was said to have received her wisdom from Shiva in the form of Tantra practice. It is also Kali who appears to dominate much of the Tantric iconography, texts, and rituals. In many sources, Kali is considered to be the highest and therefore greatest of all deities, where one Tantra states that the three ultimate gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, all arise from Kali, like bubbles in the sea. In Bengali tradition, Kali has become a central figure since the 18th century. In this worship, the Bengali devotee is said to adopt the attitude of a child in order to love Kali unreservedly. Others have it that Kali is confronted on cremation grounds, in the dead of night, so that the devotee may show courage in the face of the goddess and her terrible appearance. In either case, the devotee is said to become attuned with death, and learn also that death is a natural part of life that is not to be feared. Kali has since even spread into the Western world, where many consider her to be an exciting figure to learn from and reflect upon. Feminists are a large set of participants who are attracted to the idea of goddess worship, and many resonate with Kali, who they consider to be an embodiment of female power and sexuality. Despite all that we know about Kali, many consider her to be the most misunderstood goddess of all. As I've stated, she is most commonly associated with death, sexuality, violence, and paradoxically, motherly love. But it's also noted that while many modern feminists view Kali as a symbol of sexuality, she isn't necessarily associated with sexuality in the original stories, where some believe that she is celibate, practicing both austerity and renunciation. But worship of Kali isn't necessarily divine when we consider a group known as the Foggy, who operated in the 14th to the 19th century of India. Membership to the group was said to be hereditarily achieved, being passed down from father to son, although it was not unlikely for particular criminals to be recruited if they were deemed worthy. Records of the Foggy are unclear, but it is believed that during their peak, they had thousands of followers during its 600 years of operation, and have estimated to have killed anywhere between 500,000 and 2 million people. The Foggy are said to trace their origin to the Battle of Kali and Raktabija, and considered themselves to be the children created from Kali's sweat. They would promote the fiercest aspects of Kali, perhaps embellishing her destructive ways, and believed that by committing human sacrifices to her and assassinations, they were doing her sacred work. It's claimed that they would eventually be wiped out by the British in the mid-19th century, where others now consider the cult to be something of myth and folklore. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to leave a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Until the next time.